the addiction paradigm. Are we correct as Christians to use the term addiction when it comes to the issue of pornography? So he says, describing habitual pornography use as an addiction and embracing related terminology of sobriety, detox, recovery, triggers, and relapse has become ubiquitous in conservative Protestant literature on sexual sin and pornography use in particular. So is pornography use an addiction? Well, for a long time I have been saying yes, I do tend to use that word, and it's a divisive thing. And so does the mental health literature say that pornography is addiction? How do we define the issue of an addiction? But here's a few reasons I have tended to use that term. One, the neuroscience on the brain, what it is showing that pornography can do to the brain. Secondly would be, my experience as I think through my story, as I remember back at times when I would have said that I was addicted to pornography. There are seasons of my life where I can remember having such a strong draw to something like pornography, where there were certainly times when it seemed like I was lacking the willpower to say no. And it's something that you can kind of get stuck in a rut with and you can use to medicate your issues. So let me know in the comment section whether you think pornography is actually an addiction. This is something that we're gonna have to debate. Maybe I can make some more videos in the future talking about that issue. And here's one of the reasons. Let me give you some pros and cons of using language like an addiction. So the pro, if somebody is willing to say, hey, I'm an addict, this is something I'm addicted to, I think my hope was always that meant you would take it more seriously. But he actually presents a con, and the con would be this. If you say I have an addiction, are you then more likely to say, well, I have an addiction, there's nothing I can do about it, and it then actually becomes an excuse to continue diving into pornography. Now that was, I think, good for me to hear. I had never considered people using the term addiction as an excuse to stay stuck in their sin. But what does the research actually say? It says committed Christians are not more likely to watch pornography than other Americans. They're consistently more likely to label themselves addicted to pornography. I think that makes sense. And the reason I think that makes sense is that it really should bother us. We should have a sense of, if we are trying to follow Jesus and be committed to him, and then at the same time we're engaging in this stuff, that should really bother us. And if we continue to do that, it's understandable why we would use the term addiction. You see, the guilt and the shame that we are experiencing, these uncomfortable emotions from looking at pornography, can be one of the things that we desire to medicate. And it can become an addictive process where you have those feelings and you want to medicate those feelings. So the way I've tended to communicate about pornography is that it becomes a medication to numb and to cover any uncomfortable emotions that you have. And in that way, it becomes the medicine of choice. And you get into the habit of, whenever you're feeling those uncomfortable emotions, you run to your addictive force. Pornography is a powerful medication to cover the things that you're struggling with. But the good news about that, if it's an addiction, is that all the science today on addictions is saying that you can break it, that there could be changes. Your brain can be, as it says in Romans 12:2, renewed. We can see transformation. And my story is one example, but there's loads of stories out there of people you can hear talk about believing they had an addiction to pornography and walking in freedom. But that journey can be extremely difficult. But one of the cons of using this kind of sensationalist language and the addiction paradigm is that often the church feels ill-equipped to deal with it. And so he talks about that in the book, how we then try to outsource it. So there's all these parachurch ministries that are addressing issues of pornography. Think of Covenant Eyes, think of Pure Desire ministries like that. And we rely on counselors. So somebody struggles with pornography, and our immediate response is, man, you need counseling. And so we're outsourcing them outside of the church. Now, one of the issues with that is, if you need counseling to deal with the issue of pornography, then here's what I would say about that. There are not enough counselors in the world to address this issue. I firmly believe that men and women in the church are equipped and capable to come alongside their brothers and sisters who are struggling with this issue. You may need to get a little bit of training. You may need to kind of hop in there scared and just dive in and try to help some people. The church is equipped to present the gospel to those of us who struggle with the issue of pornography, because this is exactly what the gospel is for. The gospel is for sinners. This is a particularly difficult stronghold, but that is what the gospel is for. God has been in the business of redeeming brokenness for as long as there has been brokenness. The link to this book, if you want to check it out, is in the description. Highly recommend it. There's some awesome research in there. Well, this is Jason for Soulfire. Here on this channel, we want to offer gospel hope for a porn-filled world. I will catch you in the next one.